Ta-da! Why am I being so goofy? Oh, lighting. Bad lighting. Anyway, so I've been seeing more of these psychology videos and doing self-therapy. I actually bought some books on Kindle. Like you can actually, you don't need the Kindle device to actually read the books. You can buy apps for your Mac or PC or iPhone or whatever, Android, and you can read it. So you don't need the Kindle device. So I bought 2 books. One is Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Visited by Sam Vaknin. And well, that one, the Kindle version was like, I don't know, $10, $11. And the other one is Codependency for Dummies by Darlene Lancer. And yeah, this is some pretty good stuff because I've got a lot of these issues, especially these codependent issues. Well, the narcissism, it's good too. Because as a mostly codependent person, people can have narcissistic traits, but a pathological narcissist is, I think their key feature is that they lack empathy for others' suffering. That is their primary feature, the lack of empathy for others' suffering. That is like very, that's crazy. But anyway, so as a mostly codependent person, I tend to be attracted to people like that, or something like that, who might have those kinds of traits. Because I've noticed that in my relationships with people, friends, whatever, it can be anything. I'm always it's always like this dynamic where I am I'm attracted to these people who I perceive as having power or status, or they might be the cool kid, they might be popular or whatever. They might be like the alpha or whatever it is, and I'm always trying to impress and please them, and they in turn like me because I'm always like laughing at their jokes or whatever, and I'm always like, so they like, I didn't realize this, I'm just looking back on my relationships, and so I was providing them narcissistic supply, because I would always like tell them, you're cool, and I would be like, just my energy, like when I'm around them, I guess they derived something from my presence, because I was always there to please them, and so people like that tend to, they might not give a shit about me, but so the thing is, and the reason, and by what I got out of those relationships is that because I'm seeking validation, external validation, because in childhood I think I was as a child, your parents or your primary caretakers have to give you all that validation and stuff, so you can internalize it and you can self-validate. So when you are denied validation as a child between 1.5 and 6 years or something, if there is a lack of validation or emotional comfort or support, you become like, you're always trying to this is actually kind of interesting. I'll actually link to a video where this person was Daylight Out of Darkness was talking about this thing called object relations theory or something, and It's actually like apparently it was developed by some psychoanalyst. Actually, she said it anyway. You see her video, and I'm sort of. She said some interesting things in that video where she was saying like, as human beings, we are when we are born, we are completely the baby. Human baby is completely dependent on the parent for survival, and so it's like. How do you say this? So, evolutionarily speaking, it was the babies that were born, which the ones which were successful in replicating were those babies, which had the behavior of getting the parent to like them. You know, if the parent liked the baby, then that parent is going to take care of that baby's needs, and that baby is likely to survive, right? So one of the psychological mechanisms an infant would use is when you look at the face of the parent or caregiver, and if the baby did not receive some kind of a positive response or something like a validation, right? The baby would feel afraid, like, oh my God, I'm going to be abandoned. This person doesn't like me. I'm going to be abandoned. Therefore, I'm not going to live. It's like a very primal survival instinct, and it's like a programming, reflexive brain programming. So what the baby does is it creates a false self in order to please, in order to do whatever it needs, in order to get that positive feedback from the parent. Because if the parent gives a positive feedback, then the baby feels like, oh, this person is going to take care of me because they like me. So as children, our caretakers have to actually provide validation to us. And if they do that, then we will have a true self. We will, our internal needs are going to be met. They're going to be, you're not going to have this kind of, you won't create, there's no necessity for creating a false self. But if they're not met, you create a false self, and you always, it's a survival thing, right? And this behavior, this learned behavior, this reflexive behavior, it's a pattern that gets repeated throughout the adult's life. Adults can do the same thing. So for me, I tend to please people. I tend to I'm reading this book, and I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I tend to do. Is I tend to try and be what everyone else wants me to be, to get them to like me, because it's like I'm looking for that external validation, because somewhere in my infancy I was denied that, probably from my dad. I'm definitely sure, because my dad was very distant, and he was a source of fear. He was a sort of fear in my infant life. An infant should not have fear. If you introduce fear like that into an infant's life, they're going to have trauma. So, and even maybe my mom was maybe too clingy. Perhaps something happened in my childhood where, I've heard this said, where the mother might look to the child to fulfill her needs rather than fulfilling the needs of the child, right? So the healthy thing to do is for the mom or parent to, let's talk about the mom to actually nurture the child, recognize what the child wants and provide it with positive reinforcement or whatever, something like that. But if the mom is stressed out, I'm pretty sure my parents were fighting. Okay, they really shouldn't have gotten married. It was an arranged marriage. My dad was in love with someone else, but there was this whole dowry thing and perhaps he needed the money or something, and he got married to my mom. And so it was not like a love marriage. It was an arranged marriage. It was this cultural thing. And so there might have been very conflict early on in the relationship. And so my mom might have, when I was born, because I was the firstborn or whatever, and she might have had a very strong connection to me, or, psychological enmeshment. Sometimes they call it emotional incest. And that's an interesting topic, because Anyway, so yeah, so this is what happens with narcissists are also kind of similar, except I think like narcissists and codependents are two sides of the same coin. But what the narcissists they tend to do is they also create a false self, but instead of trying to please other people or do stuff like that, what the narcissists tend to do is they want their ego to be like they lack empathy for what they do. That's the key thing. They just want their ego to be like the narcissist creates a false self that is lovable because the narcissist in childhood wasn't given that love. So the again, it's that same mechanism: create the false self to survive, to please the caretaker, to get them to survive. But what happens is that the narcissist somehow, I still have to do more research into this, but the narcissist, so instead of becoming a codependent type person or whatever, the narcissist goes the other way, and they become like, their ego is much more like prominent, or anyway, it's like an opposite of the codependent, I think. So this is why narcissists and codependents, like, they get into this very toxic kind of relationship, because they're attracted, like the codependent is attracted to the narcissist because the narcissist is like, it's going to give them validation, and the narcissist is happy to give validation to anyone who pleases them. So I mean, if you criticize the narcissist isn't going to like you because they're like, oh my god, how dare you, because their whole existence depends on this self, this false self, that is lovable. They need that love. And if you critique the narcissist is just not going to like you. But if you're with someone who's always trying to please you, who's always trying to put your needs first, the narcissist is going to like a person like that. So the narcissist will like a codependent because the codependent is always trying to please the narcissist. The codependent will rarely criticize the narcissist. So that's why it's kind of like a parasitic, symbiotic kind of relationship. Anyway, so I've been seeing lots of these videos. I'm just like interested in this because I think this is more like this kind of seems more scientific to me. It's not like some kind of woo-woo crap. It seems like there's some logical basis to this. So it feels like an analytical, systematic type of thing where you can get to the root of the problem or whatever. Let's talk about this emotionally insisting. And the reason I bring that up is I think my dad was jealous of me because I think he could sense that my mom sort of liked me more than she liked him. In a healthy relationship, the mother has to love the husband, right? But because of some kind of abusive stuff or conflict, high conflict, violence, whatever, my mom took her emotional needs from me or whatever. And my dad, I remember once my dad has, like, I remember once, like, there was this particular situation, I think they had a fight or something, and I could hear these fights, I could hear them fighting, and this was just so traumatic. I mean, when parents fight in front of their kids, that itself is kind of abusive. But anyway, so and I was worried that my dad was hurting my mom or something. For some reason, I don't know. I don't know why. I just felt like that. I don't know. I just felt like I had to protect my mom from my dad. I just felt it. And so I would be up, in our room, and I'll be like just listening to this, whatever it is. And I think I saw my mom coming out of the room naked or something, and I was like, oh god, what the fuck is going on? And I think my dad followed, and I could see, like, it was like we were all sleeping on the floor on some mattress, and this is like when I was 6, 7, maybe, very young, in the United Arab Emirates. So it was very young, and I could see my dad's frame in the door, and he was looking at me, and I was pretending that like I was asleep because I didn't want them to know that I was listening, or I didn't want my dad to know. But then when I got up, I could see him looking at me, and he had this expression like, Like he was like, huh, something like that, like, huh. So like as like I was what like I didn't like what he was doing to my mom, and he sensed it, and I felt ashamed of it. I felt like I shouldn't be intervening here. This is not my business. Anyway, so yeah, I felt ashamed of that because I didn't want to. I didn't want to stand up to my dad because I was very afraid of him, and I didn't want him to think that I was judging him or something. Even back then, I was like a people pleaser. I couldn't even stand up to my dad. It's like that's way too personal stuff again. I'm a bit fat. I'm gradually losing weight. One by one, a little bit at a time. Yeah. Anyway, so, well, the title is oh God, I hate these titles. I don't know what to think of it. Well, codependents and narcissists are two sides of the same coin. I mean, I could be wrong, but this is just like, I'll say it seems that codependents and narcissists are two sides of the same coin. No, codependents have a parasitic relationship. But yeah, I have to say, this movie is really good. This movie, It Follows, it's a really good horror movie. See it. It's a really good. It's pretty creepy and there's a lot of suspense. It's a pretty good horror movie. Yeah, I'll link it to that video by Daylight Out of Darkness. And, yeah.